Need a motion to come out of executive session? Motion.
Second.
All in favor? Sorry, we kept you a little bit longer than 10 minutes in the discussion regarding this issue regarding Mr. Paulson. I just want to state that we were given some additional information. We reflected on our decision, and there will be another vote. Mr. Martin, would you like to clarify that, please?
Yeah, let's be clear that this board has always valued the community input, and tonight is certainly an example of that. However, the lady down to my right and your left kiddingly said she'd make the motion to go into executive session. This wasn't a referendum, and your input, while always appreciated, did not change the board's mind tonight. The board went in, that's not the answer to what happened. Breathe. The board went into executive session because it felt as a body and as a group of elected officials that it needed more information. They asked all of their questions. They got all of the answers that they could. Some questions can't be answered. The question of how you truly feel about a matter sometimes can't be answered. But they did everything that they could to get as close as they could to that. And following their conscience, they are dealing with their statutory obligations, as is Dr. George. Dr. George, my understanding based upon our discussion in executive session is that you want to make an addendum to the, and we're recording this, so please be quiet. You want to make an addendum to the personnel agenda to recommend the rehire of Mr. Paulson for the 13-14 school year?
That is correct.
Okay. Mr. Vitti, you need a motion in a second. You would follow this with a typical personnel roll call.
Do I have a motion? I have a motion and a second. Discussion?
Second.
No, we have a motion and a second. Discussion. All in favor?
Ms. Gunn?
We do a roll call.
Ms. Gallagher, I'd like to do a roll call.
Mr. Bennett?
Yes.
Mr. Brand?
Yes.
Mrs. Caminiti?
Yes.
Mr. Cody?
Yes.
Mr. Donnelly?
Yes.
Mrs. Griffin?
Yes.
Mr. Wexelberg?
Yes.
Mrs. Minuis?
Yes.
Mr. Avita?
Yes. Mr. Paulson, there's your new principal. Is there anyone else at the mic for public comment? Seeing no one else at the mic, I'd like to close the public. Yes? Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Mr. Dunn.
Sound like they all come together.
Speak loud.
Is there?
I've got a call about it.
We can hear you.
I just would like to ask something. Number one, there was so much going on.
Is it, can you turn it up?
All right, there was so much going on when we first came in that this totally got, I could have commented on it before the meeting, but I have a question for item number 17 on page 3 of 16. It's Monmouth Ocean Educational Service. I see that there are rates for social workers, psychologists, LDPCs, speech therapists, all things that we have in the district. Can you just answer for me why we're paying an outside agency to do work that for people that we have in the district?
I'm sorry, Ms. Guy, are you referring to item 17 on the...
On page 3 of 16, for Monmouth Ocean Educational Service.
That's for additional work that needs to be completed beyond the scope of our regular personnel.
What,
I-
if they're social workers, psychologists, you mean our people cannot perform those duties?
I really, without Mr. Dunn here, I would have to get more information. Mr. Dunn, do you want to speak to that?
It's actually just, like I said, in some cases, it's for leaves or anything in that regard. We just contract out with them.
I'm sorry.
He said it's for leaves in some cases that we contract out.
For
In
leaves?
other cases, we also have them provide testing evaluations because, right, we could be short on people, that we could have an overload in a particular month on evaluations. So we've also, to work with our staff.
Were these things posted for our staff?
That's part of their regular job description.
So
They're
this is
regular-
not,
they're
this
regular job
is
duties.
work that's being done during the school year?
Correct.
Okay. All right, the other question I had was, or actually, it's not a question, it's a point that I'd like to make. I don't know if any of you noticed that the people that were hired to work, the teachers that were hired to work in the summer, the people that were hired as remedial teachers that are being paid for 50 pro rata hours are all very low-paid teachers. The teachers that were hired for enrichment and got very few hours, relatively speaking, some of them are low-paid, but some of them are the highest-paid teachers. And it just seems to me that teachers are based more on their salaries than on their, what I've been told is always we pick the best teachers. Anybody want to comment on that? Because I've had a lot of teachers that have come to me that have noticed that, and particularly teachers who were on an email that went out saying that they didn't get them, and they all noticed that they were higher paid teachers, all of the ones that were not hired for that position.
Yeah, no, teachers are interviewed by the principals and are hired based on their merit for these positions.
But that doesn't answer my question. Why every one of these teachers on this list is a teacher-
Every one of those teachers on that list,
on this list of summer remedial teachers. The teachers that were not hired were teachers that were making a much higher salary. So all the teachers that were making a lower salary. And I'm not talking about qualifications whatsoever. I'm just pointing out that it appears to me that teachers were not hired based on qualifications, but simply as a matter of their salary.
as I said to you, that the teachers were interviewed and chosen by their principals based on their merit.
Okay. Last thing I'd like to point out, Mr. Vita, with all due respect, when you stood up here and you said that the decision was made before giving somebody lifetime tenure, really, as a teacher, I find that very offensive. Because there's no such thing as lifetime tenure, okay? Tenure can be removed, and there's a process that has always been in place, and saying something like that is exactly what the public believes. Well, you put a teacher in and you can never remove them.
Well, Mrs. Geyer, you know that's largely the case. It's not impossible to remove a teacher, but it costs a lot of taxpayer money.
I understand that. I just want to make it clear that when you say that someone's getting lifetime tenure, that that's not accurate, nor is it totally appropriate, especially going into the new evaluation system, Mr. Barton, where teachers can be removed after two not stellar evaluations. So it's no such thing as lifetime tenure.
Mr. Pete, it is after midnight, and you have an obligation to adjourn the meeting.
We have one more speaker.
Okay.
I'm Chris Fisher from across Middletown. I just wanted to say that thank you to the board and the Dr. Groch's staff for the help that the Cross Middletown received this year. Today we wrapped up our first season. It was a great success. We ended up having 117 student athletes between the 4 programs. With records of the Middletown North girls at 9-4-2, the boys at 3-8, the South boys finished at 8-7, and the South girls finished at 14-0-2. It's an amazing feat considering most of these girls never picked up a stick or even knew the rules before the season started. And the kids are really, they're sad the season's over and looking forward to starting a varsity program and JV program next year. And again, thank you to all of you for all your help, and we look forward to bigger and better things for all the town students. Thank you.
Need a motion to adjourn the meeting? Motion to adjourn. Second.